Toyota RAV, you've got a lot to answer for. Not only did the original start the whole SUV craze back in 1994, but the hybrid version in 2019 ushered in electrification for mainstream Australia. Right now, there are almost 3 dozen hybrid SUVs available in Australia and counting, including these 2 newcomers, the Honda ZR-V e-HEV and the Nissan X-Trail e-Power. Which one's right for you? Keep watching. So, I know what some of you may be thinking. Why aren't we comparing the X-Trail with the newly released Honda CR-V? Well, that CR-V Hybrid starts at $60,000 drive away, while the X-Trail Hybrid is available from under $55,000 drive away in STL guise, which, by the way, is the drive away price also for the Honda ZR-V Hybrid. Keep in mind that Honda will release cheaper hybrid grades in the near future. Released in mid-2023 and based on the excellent Civic hatch, the ZR-V is the new kid on the block, and starting at $54,900 drive away, what it lacks in size against the X-Trail is more than made up for in features. At this price point, both include heated front seats, dual zone climate control, wide Apple CarPlay / Android Auto, privacy glass, 18-inch alloys, and a full suite of driver assist safety systems, including autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, and surround view cameras. But while every X-Trail e-Power comes with the scary sounding E-Force badge that sounds like Border Security Patrol, but really means all-wheel drive in Nissan speak, the STL lacks the Honda's 12-speaker Bose audio upgrade, leather upholstery, heated steering wheel, powered front seats, heated rear seats, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless charger, reverse tilt exterior mirrors, interior air purifier, and hands-free power tailgate with walkaway closing. For an electric tailgate, leather and smartphone charger, you'll need to step up to the X-Trail Ti e-Power as tested from $54,690 before on road costs or just under $60k drive away, giving the ZR-V LX Hybrid a handy $5,000 head start. However, the Ti does bring its own little exclusive luxuries, like tri-zone climate control, adaptive matrix LED headlights, a panoramic sunroof, exterior mirror camera view, and 19-inch alloys. Though you'll need to fork out for the range-topping X-Trail TIL from $57,160 before on road costs to more fully match what the ZR-V LX Hybrid spec offers. But like we said, the Nissan has greater size on its side. Before we kick off on design, here are 2 annoying facts about the Honda. First off, apparently ZR-V stands for Gen Z Recreational Vehicle. Trying hard much, Honda? Or maybe not trying hard enough? In Australia, the ZR-V colour range is pitiful, with just 5 choices against the Nissan's 14. Please at least import the aqua green and petrol blue as offered in Japan, or better still, inject some actual variety. The Honda ZR-V is like a mixed album compilation of greatest hits of SUVs when it comes to styling. The front has a bit of Maserati Grecale meets Ford Escape, and over to the side, I can definitely see quite a bit of Porsche Macan and Mazda CX-5, no bad thing. While at the back, behold, Audi Q5 Sportback with a soupçon of Lexus NX. Meanwhile, over at the Nissan, stylistically, I think it's quite handsome, well resolved, and that flows quite nicely in the profile with its quite strong crease line and deep windows and boxy proportions. It's a handsome SUV. However, around the front, the nose, well, it's a bit fussy and looking a bit dated. Nissan's already facelifted it in America as the Rogue, but apparently we're not seeing that nose for a couple of years. So anyway, I digress. The main difference between the 2 vehicles is that one is clearly larger than the other. This by about 100 millimeters in terms of height and wheelbase and length, which translates to more interior space inside. So let's go check that out. Advantage X-Trail. Families seeking space in a larger than usual midsize SUV need look no further. We're driving the Ti, but the X-Trail interior you see right now is what the base STL version looks like inside. Note the smaller 8-inch rather than 12.3-inch central screen, more traditional analog instrumentation cluster with a 7-inch TFT screen, non-leather seat trim, and conventional rather than camera interior mirror. You're also likely to notice how large and airy the X-Trail's interior really is, with heaps of legroom, headroom, and shoulder room. Actually, the last one's an illusion in these vehicles because they're really around the same width. Still, Nissan, just like Honda, got this interior right, with most of the important stuff thoughtfully executed. Superb build quality, excellent ventilation, completely logical control and button layout, and easy USB access. But the X-Trail does present a compelling argument whether you're searching for a family hauler or an eco-focused, practical urban runabout. The latest X-Trail's interior is a big step forward over the previous ones, and that manifests itself in good quality materials, the fact that there's excellent storage, plenty of space, great vision, especially out back due to the side windows, and a really good driving position. There's really not much at all to complain about the layout and presentation and packaging of the latest X-Trail. Over in the back seat, there's even space for me to cross my legs. Just a sense of width and airiness. It's very comfortable. One thing that the Nissan has that the Honda doesn't have is this ability to slide the seat as well as recline it. So it reclines a little bit, so it's very easy to get comfortable back here. That all said, it's not as if Honda was sitting on its hands when creating its mid-sized SUV's interior. Strangely enough, the ZR-V is not as tight inside as its smaller length and wheelbase measurements suggest, especially if you're a human and not, say, a tumble dryer trying to be loaded in the back. More on that later. Up front, the ZR-V's typical modern Honda, with a simple, some might even say sparse, dashboard layout that manages to look stylish as well as sensible. These leather front seats are cushy and nicely bolstered, providing an excellent driving position ahead of elegant and crystal clear digitalized instrumentation. Ample room for even taller adults means the ZR-V's rear isn't cramped by any means, just cozy due to the well-padded seating that doesn't recline or slide, by the way, and smallish side windows. Like the X-Trail, you'll find a folding center armrest with cup holders, handy USB ports and overhead lighting, although the Nissan's more generous door storage can actually hold larger bottles, while its 40-20-40 split backrest means the center bit folded down provides additional load-through accessibility for longer objects. There's a veritable cornucopia of detailing that really draws me to this car. I love the fact that there are 8 pillars that are thin, so the driver's vision isn't obstructed. The honeycomb grille effect for the vents, as well as their up, down, and left-right toggle switches. The toggle switches for the drive mode, which means that the driver doesn't have to be distracted by diving into the multimedia system. I love the driving position. The instrumentation has a pictogram of the car that shows when the indicator is on or when you're braking with the taillights, and that's very useful, I think, for the driver. The paddle shifters provide regenerative braking assistance, so when you push them down, they provide a bit more, if not quite single pedal, then a little bit more resistance when you're braking. And there's this. Some say that it sounds a bit like a Bette Midler song from the 1980s, which just always gets me. They're the positive points. The negative points, I do not like the gear shifter. It's too easy to select reverse when you mean to push the button for drive, and that can be quite confusing. Overhead vision when reversing is quite limited due to, ironically, thick pillars in the back. There's no sunroof, and of course there's no spare tyre. But let's end on a good note in here. I love the fact that the interior lights have a soft one-touch activation. It's really classy, and that, I think, sums up the interior of the ZR-V. The Nissan X-Trail has 205 litres more cargo capacity than the Honda ZR-V, and those figures are on the screen right now. But In reality, it's still fairly large and spacious in either of these cars, but keep in mind that neither has a space saver or full-size spare wheel at all, just a can of goo. One of the key differences between these and the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid is that these are a lot more EV to drive. The Nissan uses a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine that never drives any of the wheels, but instead powers the battery that powers one of 2 electric motors, one on each axle, for motivation, while the Honda uses a 2 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol engine to drive either the electric motor or sometimes the front wheels. So this one's front wheel drive, this one's all-wheel drive, and this one never gets driven by the petrol engine alone. Still, from behind the wheel, they're remarkably similar in how they feel and behave, even if they sound completely different on the road. For starters, both are no slouches, despite relying on a continuously variable transmission, the infamous CVT strikes again, to drive these hybrid SUVs. The X-Trail's 1.5 litre turbo triple produces 106 kilowatts of power and 250 Nm of torque on its own, but with help from a power generator, inverter and twin electric motors making 150 kilowatts on the front axle and 100 kilowatts on the rear, and its combined power and torque outputs are 157 kilowatts and 525 Nm respectively. The latter happens from 0 revs, by the way, since the electric motor is always doing the driving. The ZR-V's 2 litre Atmo 4, meanwhile, delivers 104 kilowatts and 186 Nm, but combined with the single 135 kilowatt motor, makes a combined 135 kilowatts and 315 Nm. Against our stopwatch, there was really very little in it between the two hybrids, say 7.1 seconds versus 7.6 seconds to 100 km an hour in favour of the gutsier Nissan. But for most of that speed, the two were only about 0.2 seconds apart, until the X-Trail's extra torque finally overcame all that extra mass. That said, during our 70 to 100 km an hour overtaking manoeuvre, both needed 2.9 seconds, again highlighting the Honda's lightness. Braking hard from 100 to 0, the ZR-V stopped 3 metres shorter at 39.2 metres. Again, blame the Nissan's weight. Keeping all that performance in check in both SUVs are McPherson-style struts up front and a multi-link rear end. One of the most enjoyable things about the X-Trail e-Power is how electric it feels most of the time. That's because it's always driving in electric mode. The engine you hear, the 3-cylinder 1.5 turbo petrol engine, is there just to charge the battery. And right now, you can probably hear it. It's doing its job like a generator, keeping that battery charged so we can drive on EV motor only mode. When it's just purely EV only, it is really quiet, and step-off acceleration is brisk. It's obviously silent and it's super smooth. It really is one of the most enjoyable aspects of driving this car. Nissan has tuned the steering, meanwhile, for it to be quite a sharp little handler, and along with a fairly tight turning circle, it's very agile and easy to maneuver around town. The deep windows also make it easier to park, and changing lanes is also helped by the fact that you've got great all-round vision, aided, may I add, by the large multimedia screen and its surround view cameras. On the other hand, the steering is a little bit nervous at speed. So at freeway speeds at around 70 or 80, when you're driving along and you're staying in your lane, you've got to, even if you just naturally make little corrections to keep the car on the straight and narrow, and it feels like the car is a little bit on the tip of a pivot, and so there's a bit of lurching and body movement. It's not something you notice straight away, but it is one of the issues I have with the X-Trail e-Power. The other one is the brakes. The brakes work fine, like they do a great job stopping the car in a timely manner, but the pedal itself feels unnatural and wooden. Pretty much everything else is impressive. As I said earlier, when the petrol engine kicks in, you hear it. It's a bit of a dull thrum. And it's in various levels of revving, so if it really needs to charge the battery up quickly, you'll hear it, and it's quite noticeable, but it's not annoying. It's like a background noise you get used to. When you do get into the all-electric mode, it's silent like an EV should be. I am very impressed also with the X-Trail's suspension. We're driving the TI model, which is on 19-inch alloy wheels, and even then, the ride is fairly supple. It deals with smaller bumps really well. Only when you come across slightly larger ones do you feel a little bit of the bump, like there's a little bit of a jolt, but generally, given that this doesn't have any sort of adaptive damper or air suspension or anything like that, the ride is more than acceptable. And the more people you have on board, the more comfortable it is. I think Nissan has done a great job in developing the dynamic flow of this car, and it's also so enjoyable to drive. I just wish that they fine-tuned the steering to be slightly less nervous at speed and the brakes slightly less grabby and snatchy when you need to stop. They just need a bit more nuance. But other than that, I think Nissan's really sorted this car out from a driving perspective. Make no mistake, if you love driving, the Honda ZR-V is for you. Now, this car runs on both petrol and electric motor power. Predominantly petrol, although the electric motor shuffles in and out, and which means that the petrol motor cuts in and out as required. So when you're driving it just on pure petrol, it's got a lot of zing to it. It's a great soundtrack. It doesn't sound drony and rumbly like the Nissan's engine. Instead, it sounds like a Honda engine should. It's revvy, it's strong, it's spirited, and that's really obvious the moment you put your foot down, because it just loves to just take off. It's that sort of car. The CVT transmission does flare a little bit, but that electric assistance that it receives once the car's on the move gives it a handy turn of speed. But that's just the start of this car's driving pleasure, because its steering is beautifully weighted, yet it's relaxing. So when you're driving at speed, it's quite calm and it's confidence inspiring. And then you hit a set of twisty turns and the car grips the road and it turns and tucks into corners the way you would expect a semi-hot hatch to. It really does have a next level dynamic capability compared to pretty much any other SUV at this price point. Honda also has done well to tune the suspension for this car for Australian roads, because this one rides on 18-inch wheels and tyres, and the suspension has no problems coping with bumps and road irregularities and that sort of thing. It's comfortable, it's composed, and even though it's a little bit on the firm side at times, it's never harsh. So you don't get the extremes that you do with the X-Trail, which on 19-inch wheels and tyres, the ride can get a bit bumpy at times. However, probably my biggest issue with this car is the amount of road and wind noise. Now, the road noise comes through only on certain coarse surfaces, such as on Australian bitumen highways. It just kind of permeates through the cabin as a rumble, and it's quite tiring. While these large exterior mirrors also create quite a bit of wind noise in certain conditions. Other than that, it's really hard to fault dynamically. Great steering, strong performance, excellent brake modulation. Oh, and like the Nissan, it also is quite reassuring to drive on gravel roads, because the stability control and the traction control systems are beautifully nuanced in both cars. Officially, the Honda should return 5 litres per 100 kilometres, while the Nissan should return 6.1 litres per 100 kilometres. But in reality, during our week with both hybrid SUVs that included a lot of inner urban schlepping, as well as spirited driving and repeated performance testing, which tends to sap the fuel, the ZR-V averaged 7.3 litres per 100 kilometres versus 8.6 for the X-Trail. Note that the latter requires the more expensive 95 RON Premium Unleaded Brew too. For the record, the car's computers read 6.1 in the Honda and 7.4 in the Nissan. And, just in case you're wondering, the X-Trail's lithium-ion battery is pretty modest at 2.5 kilowatt hours, but that's exactly twice as large as the ZR-V's. Finally, neither are required to be plugged in since, as mentioned earlier, the petrol engines in both vehicles do all the battery charging. The latest Nissan X-Trail has scored a 5-star crash test rating with ANCAP. However, the Honda ZR-V hasn't been tested as yet. Both models offer lots of driver assist safety equipment like autonomous emergency braking, blind spot alert, lane keep assist systems, and adaptive cruise control with full stop-go function. However, there are omissions. The Honda misses out on the Nissan's rear AEB, while the Nissan's 7 airbag rating trails the Honda's 11, which includes full side airbag protection for outboard rear seat occupants. For a more detailed safety rundown, check out the full comparison at carsguide.com.au. Both these medium-sized SUVs offer a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty as well as 5 years of roadside assistance. However, there are some differences. But the ZR-V goes one better, with a no-cost subscription for the first 5 years to Honda Connect for remote vehicle operation, location and geofencing if required. The Honda servicing intervals are at every 12 months or 10,000 kilometres, with cap price servicing pegged at an annual flat fee of $199 for the first 5 years. That means it costs under $1,000 over that 5-year period. Nissan, meanwhile, matches all that, bar the Honda Connect tech, and offers 6 years of cap price servicing. But at the 5-year mark, the X-Trail e-Power costs over $1,300 more than the ZR-V Hybrid. The vehicles behind me represent two of the best medium SUVs on the market right now, regardless of price and positioning. Which one's for you depends on what you need it for. The Nissan is undoubtedly the better family car because it's larger and roomier and has more practicality. Plus, it's quieter than the Honda. On the other hand, the Honda has an athleticism and an agility that makes it second to none. It's got a high quality interior, it's better equipped for the money, and it's actually really enjoyable to drive. Whichever one you decide, keep in mind that the next generation Toyota RAV4 Hybrid has to be very good indeed to catch up with these two. Don't forget, you can read the full comparison review at carsguide.com.au, and as always, thanks for watching.